Welcome to Spiritual Cartel Step Meeting. Tonight we're looking at step 10 and 11. And this week I'm pleased to introduce Matt T, who has kindly come to share for us. Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Pauline. My name is Matt. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Of course, as soon as I start speaking, my dog decides to start tinkering in my room. Come on, Penny. Go. Thank you. She sounds like she walks in high heels. Um, so like I said, my name's Matt. I'm a recovered alcoholic, addict, sex addict, codependent, debtor. They all fit. I and I'm excited to be here. I have a prayer that I say before I speak every single time. I don't know if you saw me scrambling for a pen, but what I do is I write on my desk calendar here before I speak every time a simple 3-word prayer that is, God, you're up. And it is my hope that when I say something, that it'll be of use and value to someone in the room. I think that Zoom recovery is the coolest thing that happened to us, because how else would I be able to speak at a meeting in England? Right? So steps 10 and 11, and I think it's important that we talk about how we get here. I think it's important that we talk about why I use the word recovered, because I use that because that's what the literature promises me, is that I won't struggle with the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, which is when I got here. I didn't exactly know what that meant. And I came here because I was 100% broken by my own doing. And everything that I tried to fix the problem didn't work. And I think we have to set the stage for steps 10 and 11, and I'm going to try to do that as briefly as I possibly can. And I come in here thinking that I have a drinking and a drug problem, right? And I find that I have a me problem. And I think that 12-step programs are the greatest bait and switch, because I come here and I say, please help me stop. Please help me stop starting. Please help me stitch my life back together. And what I get is a spiritual experience that makes the drugs and the booze just not a thing. Right? Like I didn't come here thinking that I could live the life that I live now. In my first meeting, I raised my hand and I blamed all of my problems on my then girlfriend. And when nobody applauded my profound spiritual contribution to the meeting, I got up and stormed out. I wanted a prize just for being in the meeting. I wanted a prize for opening my mouth. I wanted a prize just for showing up for myself. I had no idea what it meant to be what I was. And until I took 3 trips to treatment, until I watched everything that you said was going to happen if I did not grab hold of the recovery, I watched everything that you said was going to happen if I couldn't get honest with myself about myself and who I was and where I was and what I was going through. I watched all of it devolve. I watched all of it progress. It never got better, no matter how much I tried. And I tried every cocktail under the sun. Right? I tried just drinking. I tried just drugs. I tried this much drinking and this much drugs. I tried this much drugs and this much drink. Right? I tried every manageable. I tried to manage things best I can. And what I tell my sponsees all the time is that normal people, muggles, they don't need to manage their recreational drinking and drug use. They just don't. And then I found myself like face down in my own problems. And I met a very gentle man who was willing to explain to me what it meant to be what I was, and that I'm physically different from people who don't suffer from what I suffer from. That when I put something that alters my mind into my body, everything that I've ever been promised is in the one that's to come. And I chase that and I crave that to the point where I'm willing to suspend everything that I love just to achieve that, period. And the thing is that that's not my problem either, because if that's my problem, then just stop is the solution. And I can't do that either, because I have this mind that convinces me that I'm going to handle myself like a gentleman, or I'll be able to handle just one, or it'll be different this time, or it was the crowd, or whatever it tries to tell me to convince me that the thing that's trying to kill me is going to solve the internal condition that I can't even name. Right. And that's what powerless looks like. And I lose power, choice, and control. I lose one, I lose them all. Right? I don't have a say in the matter anymore. This thing has an absolute hold on me. And as a result of that, my spirit is 100% unmanageable. And I used to think the unmanageability of my life had everything to do with like my bank account or my job that wasn't it at all, because I had a job and I had a car and I had a girlfriend and I had an apartment and I had, like all of these things. I had a very like prestigious job working for the city of New York as a firefighter. It didn't matter. My insides were 100% broken, and I lived in this place of chronic dissatisfaction. I wanted to be here when I was there. I was restless, irritable, discontent. I was constantly uncomfortable. I was never satisfied, right? And the only thing that seemed to fix that was to get high. The only thing that seemed to fix that was to get high. So how do I come to a place and say, like, how are you going to substitute something that's been so effective for so long? How do I find a solution for that? Where does God fit into this? Because you guys keep talking about this God deal, and I don't know exactly how that works. And so I think the beginnings are addition by subtraction, right? All right, Matt's not God as much as he wants to be, and let's remove Matt as a possible solution to the problem. And in the vacuum of that, with just enough willingness, I create just enough space for the buddings of this relationship with God. And in that, I start to explore what playing God looks like. Right, me being this actor on the stage, trying to align everything to suit my needs. I live in this world that I believe is the Matt show, and you're all just supporting characters. And I've written you scripts and I've written you lines, and when you don't read your lines and when you don't play your roles that I've assigned you, that makes me angry. And because I can't control outcomes, that makes me scared. And because I arrive at relationships with anger and fear being the only two tools I have to navigate them with, I hurt people even when I don't want to. And I learn all of that in inventory, and the patterns of that get pointed out to me when I take from 4 to 5. Because the decision I make in step 3 doesn't really come to life until my pen hits the paper. I can make a decision to surrender my life and my will to God all I want. If I don't take any action behind that, it's just a decision. And then when I've sat with God and with my sponsor or whoever helps me with this errand, I have to come to the conclusion. I have to arrive at the place where I'm willing to have God remove these things from me. I'm given the awareness, right? Before this, we don't know what we don't know. In sobriety, I have become a yoga teacher, right? I'm a Puerto Rican kid from the South Bronx, New York City, right? Like I grew up with bullet holes in my window as a kid. My father was a crackhead. He was murdered. Like my life had many points that were rough. And my mom did a fantastic job of trying to keep me out of that. But she didn't always. And then 3 years sober, I find myself in yoga teacher training and learned so much about the spirituality of that and how to seek God in that practice. And one of the things that one of my yoga mentors used to say is that, like, once I'm given the awareness, she didn't use the word defects, but I'm going to use the word defects because we use the word defects, right? Once I'm given the awareness of my defects, I am now given a pause and a choice, and the universe is going to hold me to who I say I want to be. God is going to hold me to who I say I want to be. Do I recognize that these things are getting in the way of me being the person I want to be? These virtues that I constantly claim I want to grab hold of, that were constantly out of grasp, if I want them, I can't continue to show up in relationship like this. I can't continue to show up in the world like this. I can't continue to show up in at work like this. And so I say, God, take them. I'm just take them. Right. And what I say all the time is that, like, I don't know when he's going to take what. And I can pray for virtue, and I'm not going to get virtue. If I pray for patience, I'm going to get long lines at the department store. Like, I'm not, like, that's how that thing works. And then like from that place, it's this constant systematic willingness. Constant systematic willingness, right? I start with this willingness to believe that there's something bigger than me, and if I have a chance, it's going to fix it. And the minute I write pen to paper, that willingness has become a belief. I believe that this exercise is going to get me to this place, right? I share that with somebody else, and the belief starts to become faith. But when I really need to move from faith to trust is when I start writing a list of the people that I don't want to talk to, that I don't want to, the damage I don't want to repair, the money I don't want to give back, the uncomfortable conversations that I don't want to have. But I understand that by this point, my faith is the result of results, and I'm starting to see what my relationship with God can look like and how sobriety, how being clean can feel amazing. And I want to nurture that. And so I say, yeah, I'm willing to do just about anything. When I got here, and by the time I got to step 8, if you told me that I had to dress up in a tutu and dance in Times Square, that was going to keep me sober, I would have done. And I go out, right? And my friend Alice, she says, we spent a lot of time tearing through the fabric of the universe, and our errand now is to stitch it back together, right? And so I walk around trying to fix things. And it's not like, hey, man, I'm sorry for the baseball I threw through your window. It's like, hey, man, how much for the window? And if I don't have the money for the window, I learned how to put up a window. Right? Like, it's that important for me to not have to look over my shoulder. It's that important for me to restore the balance and the rhythm of life that I for so long disrupted. I didn't know how to operate any, and it doesn't matter, right? Like so many times, like I didn't want to hurt people. I didn't want to be so mean. I didn't want to be so selfish. I didn't want to neglect other people. I didn't want to cast people's feelings aside. In my heart, I'm not a malicious person. And yet this thing just drove me to this place. And I have this mind that just spins me around with guilt, shame, and remorse. And I stay in that cycle. And this is the beginning of that healing process. I begin to forgive myself as I walk around forgiving others. And all of a sudden I find myself experiencing these promises that they told. All of the promises that I experience in this program are contingent upon some action on my part. They aren't gimmies. The only gimme I get is the grace to be here. Right? And tradition 3, this idea that like my desire is I came in on tradition 3. It's like, no. That's just the key tag that gets you into the gym. If you want to build some spiritual muscle, you better pick up some weights. You better do some work. You better do something when you get here, right? Or at least that's been my experience. And once I've done these repairs and these things go on, then like the book tells me, I have ceased fighting anything and anyone, right? And like, I'll tell you something, like I thought like there was a time when I was on fire for this thing, and I was going to all these big book meetings, and I was completely on, and I started to think to myself, like, wow, my life is going to blow up. Right? I'm going to be able to make some real money. I'm going to do all these things, right? Like superficial, external things that I started to see as a product of my chasing God, and that ain't it. Those things will come. I promise you that those things will come. And they won't be as important as we thought they were. And they come when we're in that place. But I'll tell you, ceased fighting everything and everyone. And why have I stopped fighting? I'm out of the fight. Right? When Bill described step 10, he called it testing my thinking against the new God consciousness within. That's how he describes step 10 in the big book. Now, what does that mean? Like, if we Tarantino our way through that statement, right? Like, so first I have to recognize that I've already tapped into this God consciousness. I've already gained access to the spirit, right? I'm in the realm of the spirit. I'm here. Because I'm already, like, if I've made it through step 9, I have had a spiritual experience. And a lot of times people talk about 10, 11, and 12 as maintenance steps. They're not maintenance steps. They're growth steps. I am supposed to grow here, grow in understanding and effectiveness. What does that mean? understanding of what God's will is for me, and more effectively carry it out. And I'm given tools to do that. Right? I need to watch for these things. Those things that came up in inventory that I discussed with my sponsor, that I found objectionable in 6 and 7, that I asked God to take away, and that I went to amend the behaviors around in 9, are not gone because I did all of that. I am not free from fear. I am not free from worry. I am not free from resentment. I am not free from dishonesty. If that was the case, then after we're done making amends, we can shut the book, stop hanging out in meetings and having our shitty coffee together, and go on with our lives. But that's not the case. So I'm supposed to watch, and not watch in a way where I spend the rest of my life playing character defect whack-a-mole. Right? Like I look for when these things come up, and I'm given the gift of awareness. The gift of awareness. I am not responsible for the thought that comes up. My brain has been wired the wrong. My friend Miles says we are wired to walk into walls. I have been wired to walk into walls for so long. It's going to be a while before I stop walking into walls. And so I watch. When I experience this fear, one of the most beautiful questions I can ask myself, I've found, is what's really going on. Right? Because if I'm experiencing fear, resentment, if I find myself being dishonest, if I'm angry, that's no longer my default state. So what is it is going on in my life that is bringing me to that place? What is really going on with me? And this is that scared me. That made me angry. God, can you take this from me? I love when the emojis start coming up on the screen. Right? Like, God, can you take this from me? And then I call somebody, right? I call Danielle and say, hey, Danielle, like I was in the store today, and like this guy he just rubbed me the wrong way, and I didn't really like the way I asked him, do you think I owe an amends? That's what we're here for. That's what the fellowship is for. It's not just for sober bowling and softball and diner trips. Right? Like we are shoulder to shoulder in this thing to keep each other accountable, right? The center of the herd. And then if I hurt somebody, I run and make amends. Promptly is the word used in the step. Right? And my sponsor used to say, promptly, Matt, means promptly. It doesn't mean promptly after it's convenient. Right? Promptly means promptly. And the thing is that the more willing I am to amend harm that I've caused promptly, the less often I find myself causing harm. Tell you guys a story. When I was during the pandemic, I was home in a very small New York City apartment with a 10-year-old son, a 5-year-old stepdaughter, a puppy, and a pregnant girlfriend. I don't need to tell you anymore, but I will, right? And so I was willing to sacrifice my life for trips to Target. I don't know if you guys have Target in the UK. It's just a department store that tricks you into buying everything that they sell. And so I would brave the long lines, masked up and gloved up, to go to Target just to get out of the house. And there have been so many spiritual experiences I've had, A, in Target, but B, with my son. And now I live in the city proper, and I also sometimes drive to other Targets in the suburbs, in the nicer areas where they have nicer Targets. And so I'm leaving my Target on this particular day. And as I'm walking out from the self-checkout, the gentleman grabs the receipt from me because he wants to verify that what I bought is on that, what's in my bag is in that receipt. And I get angry and I snatch the receipt back from him. And I say, listen, man, I go up to the Targets in Westchester, and you guys don't do that. This is discrimination against us down here in the Bronx. and I storm out of the Target. And as I'm walking out, my son looks up at me and he says, "Dad, why'd you do that?" I said, "I don't know, but I got to go apologize." And I U-turn it back inside. And I offer my amends to this gentleman. And he says to me, "You know, I apologize that I have to do that. But when everything shut down, I lost 2 of my 3 jobs that helped me feed my family. This is the only one I have left. And so I do whatever they tell me so I can make sure that my family's okay." And for a moment, not only did I feel like a massive jerk, but for a moment, like we are eyeball to eyeball and we're humans. And he forgave me and I forgave him. And the daughter that was in the belly during that time is now 4, and he still works there and he knows her by name. Right? And I can't manufacture something that beautiful and that connected if I try. Right? And now, if I'm willing to take those actions, if I'm willing to follow those directions, the promises to me tell me that I get to start using my brain again. Right? Which if you think about it, it's the first time they tell us I get to use my brain. Before this, I should be relying heavily on prayer and heavily on sponsorship and heavily on the fellowship because I don't know which way is up. And then I get here and it's like, oh, like I've been given some tools to like navigate everyday life. And now I'm equipped to not go through the world constantly causing harm and disruption. And when I do that, right, I'm promised that I will be placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Right? Like, and when I go back to this idea that like I came here for the cash and prizes, I didn't know that the cash and prizes meant position of neutrality, because I'll tell you that's the coolest place I've ever been. Right? Like to have this place where like I don't, right? Like I work in a firehouse. I spend 24 hours with 10 other knuckleheads, right? Who want to talk about what's going on in the in politics. They want to talk about what's going on in the Middle East. They want to talk about who should be for president. They want to talk about their ideas for this and that. And I guess what? I get to not have an opinion on any of it because I don't need, right? Like I believe 100%, right? What it says on page 77. That my purpose is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me, period. If I get into an argument with you about who's supposed to be the next president or prime minister, as you guys call them, whatever, right? Like what? Like if that's not my business. My business is to present myself as this sober man of God. And you know what that has afforded me? On 3 different occasions, these knuckleheads who are part of the greatest drinking fraternity on planet Earth have found me in a quiet corner of the firehouse. They say, "Hey man, I can't stop drinking. What do I do?" They're not going to get that if I'm sober, but still acting, speaking, acting out, arguing. If I'm still in the fight, I'm not. And then I use these tools, right? It talks about the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I use these tools to grow. The maintenance of my spiritual condition is the growth. There's nothing like this is not a maintenance step. And then, right, and we spend the day doing that. And then I get home and I sit with God. Right, like I told you guys, like I'm a yoga teacher. I've spent plenty of time with my legs in lotus in like some Aladdin pants with incense and candles lit and chanting and all of this other stuff. And Eastern meditation practice is beautiful, but that's not what they're talking about in the big book. That's not what they're talking about in our spiritual practice. Do I spend quiet time reflecting with God? Right? Do I take a moment, and it doesn't say I have to write it down, but do I take a moment to inventory how my day was? What fell through the cracks? Was I selfish, dishonest, or afraid? And maybe it didn't it didn't pop up when I tried to watch for it, or maybe I was too distracted by it to see it. Do I owe somebody an amends? Was I thinking about me all day? Because what I'm trying to do is mend the distance between me and God. I am not, right? God's proximity to me never changes. It's my awareness. Oh, look, I couldn't even plan that one. Right? Like it's my awareness of it that does. I get in the way of my own relationship with God. And so if I'm willing, right, one of my sponsors used to say, like, can I give God 15 minutes? He's going to give me 23 hours and 45 minutes back. Am I going to sit in at night for 15 minutes, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and just review my conduct for the day? How did I show up? And it's not to tear myself down, because sometimes I come home and I'm like, yo, bro, like the best you did was not pick up today. And that's okay sometimes too. But if I'm looking to grow in my relationship with God, if I'm looking, right, like, then I need to be able to, sometimes this stuff requires that I promptly make an amends. But at the end of it, it says we ask for God's forgiveness. And you know the way that I do that? I say, hey God, I try to do your job again today, and I still suck at it. I'm going to try to not do your job again tomorrow. Right? And I'm not carrying all of that with me when I go to bed. Right? God is never beating me up. God is never like holding grudges against me. God doesn't experience resentment, at least not in my experience. It's me. I manufacture my own misery. And if I'm trying to be free from it, there is a process and a tool for every single aspect of my life. And nightly review is one of those tools. Do I do it perfectly? Absolutely not. Right? There are times when I miss one, and then the next night I come home at the end of a long day, and I'm like, God, I ain't doing that. We'll talk in the morning. And then I blink, and it's been 2 weeks. And then I wonder why, like, my eyes are pointed in 2 different directions, and I just can't see eye to eye with people. And I just return back to the practice. Right? And I wake up in the morning, and I consider my plans for the day. Consider them, right? Which I tell my guys all the time, I'm like, don't tell God you need to get laundry done. Right? Like, where can I be of use today, God? Where can I be of service? Where am I going to be? Right? A friend of mine says, like, I wake up in the morning and I think to myself, how can I do something nice for someone today and not get caught? Right? And then I ask means pray. I ask to be divorced from selfish thinking, self-centeredness, self-pity, and all of these selves that I wake up like smothered in. Because my biggest issue is self. My biggest issue is that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deflate and defeat this ego that constantly reconstructs itself. Right? And as I go through the day, I pause. God, your will, not mine, be done. Right? Tell you guys another story. So the baby, there was a beautiful spring day. Beautiful spring day. There is a place in my firehouse, a downstairs room, where no windows, away from all of the noise and the goings-ons of the fire. And I go down there in the morning to pray and meditate. So normally when I go pray and meditate, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb so that I'm not bothered for however long I'm going to be down there. Sometimes I read 86 to 88. Sometimes I listen to a guided meditation. Sometimes I listen to some scripture, like whatever it is, however the Spirit moves me. My meditation practice has changed and evolved and returned and changed and evolved and returned over the years. Please don't try to put your meditation practice into a box. Also, don't try to put your prayer practice into a box. The all-powerful, almighty creator of the universe doesn't require that you He doesn't make too hard terms for those who seek him, is what the book says. But I say, I don't think he cares even what you call him. Anyway, I'm sitting in this basement. I'm doing my prayer meditation. First time ever, I forget to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. So I'm trying to get quiet. I'm trying to find stillness, and the phone is buzzing, 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 buzzing. Normally, I would just put the phone on Do Not Disturb and continue. But I look, and it's my sponsee's mom, who never calls me. Now, during the meditation, during the prayer, I thanked God for the weather. And I told God I was really excited that I was going to go pick up my daughter and take her to the park today. All I wanted to do was take my baby girl to the park. The phone rings. It's my sponsee's mom. And you can hear him yelling in the background. It's 9:30 in the morning. And she's like, he's been lying to you. He's been drinking for the last 3 weeks. He just threw up all over my couch. I don't know what to do. The next thing to do is to call the cops and have him admitted or something. Please help. Now, I don't have somebody to watch my child. I'm supposed to go meet up with her mom to do this baby exchange thing that we do. So I call my sponsor. I said, George, like, what do I do? He said, go back to your meditation and prayer practice. And when you're done, come pick me up. And we'll pick up the baby. And we're going to go 12-step Jason. And so I did exactly that. Now, my mom, who's one of my best friends in the world, retired, but she picks up shifts occasionally as a nurse at a rehab. Happened to be working this day. So we're on our way to Jason's house, me, George, baby in tow. And we're coming upstairs, and as we get upstairs into the building, you can hear Jason screaming at the top of his lungs, doing what we do. And his mom opens the door, and I walk in, and I have my baby in my arm, and he looks at her, and he just melts. He stops screaming. He turns around, he goes into his book bag, he pulls out a bottle, he pours it down the toilet, he packs a couple outfits into his book bag, and he says, wherever you guys are taking me, I'll go. Now we have no idea where we're going to take him. We were going there ready for a fight. So I call my mom, and I say, Ma, do you have a bed for me? She says, I'm working on it, but start driving this way. We get there, we get to the front door, he hands his ID. They take him right inside, and he gets a bed. We get right back in the car. Me, my daughter, and George go to the park and spend the afternoon in the park running. All of that was done by 12:30 in the afternoon. What I'm offered, if I stay close enough to the program, to the spiritual practices here, I get to be witness to miracles. And if I'm thorough about it, I stop thinking that I'm the one who manufactured the miracles. I get more and more evidence that God is real and God is working. Right? Step 10 asks me to watch my conduct throughout the day. Am I showing up like a sober man? Step 11 asks me to improve my contact with God, to nurture my relationship with God as I examine how my selfish behavior and my self-driven behavior compares to the will of God, and how well I'm developing the ability to decipher what that might be for me. And then taking that information out into the world, even when it's not fun, even when it's not convenient, even when it's not exactly right. Like sometimes I say, God, give me a sign, and then God gives me a sign. And I say, hey, God, can you send me a sign of your sign? Right? Like we've all done that. Right? Even when it's not that. And that produces the experience, the type of person who then gets the privilege of going out into the world and carrying this message to other people, sitting across one-to-one from another broken man and saying, hey, man, I'm not broken anymore. Let me show you what God did. Thanks for letting me share.